Hello and welcome to the Studio Q Show. My name is Quinn Jacobson and today we're going to take a look at varnishing. Varnishing is one of those things that people constantly have problems with, and while you may not resolve all your problems by watching this video, it'll give you a good start on some steps to do before, during, and after making plates before you varnish them, and I'll walk you through that. I just set up and made 3 plates here. Just photographed my daguerreotype camera. It's just a simple little shot, and I record everything on the back of my plates, all my information, and my personal little code, and then I put it down in a notebook. So that's important to do if you're going to get into this game and play in this space. You need to document what you do so you can resolve your problems or see the difference, and just good information. So let's start with talking about the 3 different kinds of varnishes, and I'm only going to deal with 3 of them today. And this is going to be I'm going to try to keep this video podcast within a reasonable time frame. So if you can see this here, I hope you can see it. We're going to talk about gum sandarac varnish, shellac, coming from the female lac bug, excrement actually, or excretions actually, sorry. Not shit, but excretions. And modern acrylics, or modern types of varnishes that's used for painting and different things like that. So we're going to talk about all 3 of these. I'm going to show you this one in somewhat of in some detail, and I've also got my audio is coming from here, so I'll bring this over. I'm going to show you this in detail. We'll do a plate with some shellac. I got a bottle of this from the Bastards group. And I'll talk to you about some of the issues that I have with this, because I can already see the carbon in the bottom of that, and there's kind of a shelf life problem with that. There's a problem with this in that we really don't know what it does, and some of the contents are proprietary, so they won't tell you what's in it. And then also the gum sandarac, of course, and that's kind of my favorite. Now, while the gum sandarac is most widely used today, taught and encouraged to use, and I do that. I teach people, although I give them alternatives. The shellac was probably the more dominant varnish in the 19th century. At least studies show that. And when I participated in preserving the chemical photography era with Doosan and Art Kaplan, I believe, at the Getty, they analyzed the plates that I sent them and looked at the material. I gave them a list of chemistry and talked about varnish. And while the gum sandarac was either mixed or in with shellac or mixed with other compounds and chemicals, the shellac was usually the dominant or prevalent varnish. And we'll look at that. Like I said, the only problem I have, the stuff seems great, but the only problem I have with it is the shelf life. And I tend to make varnish in at least 1 liter bottles at a time. And I'll kind of walk you through what I do. This is my mixing bottle, and it looks terrible, I know, and it is. And then my pour bottle, my drain bottle, just like collodion, my decanter, my little 25 mil, suck it up and put it in a test tube for really nice fresh varnish. It's kind of what we're dealing with the gum sandarac there. And of course, you always want to be prepared with your unbleached coffee filters, your dedicated funnels, and I like to use test tubes. So let's go ahead and get started about what gum sandarac is, and I'll briefly talk about the shellac and the modern acrylics, if you will, on options to use for varnish, and those are definitely options if you want to do that. I'm going to don a pair of rubber gloves. Gum sandarac is not dangerous, or varnish isn't dangerous, but it's sure sticky. It's flammable, of course. It's got a lot of alcohol in it, but I just don't like to get it on my hands. It's super sticky. What is gum sandarac? What is the gum sandarac varnish? Gum sandarac comes from a large leaf conifer tree in North Africa and Spain. It's all known as African frankincense. Whoop. Sprinkle it out on the ground a little bit. I'm trying to give you a visual on it. You've probably seen it already. You're probably trying to use it. Little pieces of sap, dried sap. And there's bark and bugs and all kinds of stuff in there. You hear people talking about. Smells good. Kind of a piney, conifer tree. Sap smell, if you will. So that's the main ingredient, right? The gum sandarac. And if you put a torch to it, or flame to it, put some fire to it, you'll see it go super clear and amber. It really smells good. Frankincense, hence the name frankincense, right? And that's kind of what we're going to do. We're going to use alcohol to take this down to a nice, clear, clean varnish. This is filtered many times through unbleached coffee filters, and then I actually filter it a couple of more times right before I put it in the test tube, or while I'm putting it in the test tube rather. And those marks on the outside of that test tube, if you can see those, that's the gum sandarac interacting with the water in the alcohol. And I'm going to talk to you about that too. What else is in gum sandarac varnish? Well, there's the alcohol, the Everclear grain alcohol, acts as the carrier, and it also dissolves the gum sandarac in its sap hard form. And you can see here, this is my mason jar. I usually make about 800, 900 mils at a time, and this is kind of the leftover residue that after it's dissolved in the alcohol, I decant it out of there and then take it into the big bottle here and let it sit. And it actually takes me about a week to make it, to be honest with you. So the alcohol is the carrier in dissolving the gum. That's the gum sandarac. And you also have lavender oil in the gum sandarac varnish. Let me set my little preview camera back up here. So that's what's in gum sandarac. It's not difficult to make. You may want to experiment a little bit with mixtures, alcohol, how many grams of gum sandarac, the thickness or the viscosity of the actual varnish, and so we know the sap or the gum sandarac provides that protective coating. We know that the alcohol dissolves it and carries it, and the lavender oil acts as a plasticizer, or it keeps the varnish pliable, and so it doesn't crack over time. Or you've seen those little spider cracks in varnish and things like that. That's what the idea behind the lavender oil is, acting as a plasticizer. So we know what's in gum sandarac. Although the current literature out, it was just last year. I had a copy of it here, and I don't know, I've put it down somewhere and I can't find it now. But I'll post it down below. The current research out right now says that shellac was the more predominant varnish over gum sandarac, but there was a lot of gum sandarac use as well too. Some people hated it, some people loved it. It's just like everything, it's the same thing today. And then there's some earlier research out of I believe it's the Eastman House. I'll look for that as well too, and you can kind of read up on it. I'm not really that concerned in the sense of what kind of varnish you use. As long as it's mixed right and as long as you're using it correctly, it should be good for a while, 100 years at least, 150 years, let's say. And we're pretty confident in that. The idea here is not to add anything that you don't know what's in the product. So if you didn't know what was in the grain alcohol or the lavender oil or whatever you're putting in the varnish, you'd want to ensure that you know what's in that varnish. That's the big thing. So that brings me to the Liquitex varnishes, the more modern varnishes. And let me see if I can, I have to put on my old man glasses here, but let me see if I can read what they say about this. Is acrylic polymer emulsion. It is liquitex.com. It's made in France. And it's, you can get it in gloss or matte, that kind of thing. Permanent varnish to protect surfaces. Establishes an even gloss finish. Protects against UV damage. Translucent when wet. Dries clear. Permanent, non-yellowing. Flexible and water resistant when dry. So they really don't even say on here what's in it. So while I use this for some things, my philosophy is this: if you're selling photographs, if you're making photographs and selling them, it's probably a good idea to stick with something that's proven. And we know that the gum sandarac is, and we also know that the shellac is. And this is the little bottle of shellac from Gerald. Gerald. I don't know. What was his last name? Fiegel. I believe it's Gerald Fiegel, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong. But that's his version of the shellac varnish. And this is quite popular. And he's got little directions on here how to use this. And it says, Collodion Bastards. Quite a nice little presentation here, actually. Collodion Bastards, Uber Super Blonde, shellac varnish for collodion plates, painfully handcrafted, small batch, carbon treated, quadruple filtered, 250 milliliters. I see the carbon suspended in that right now. Let's see. I'm going to say Platina shellac 11%, ethanol 95%, pure lavender oil 5%, and I'm not really sure what that last one is. 292, 20 drops. Quinn Jacobson, February 14th. And it's a nice little presentation. Thank you for giving Uber Super Blonde a whirl for best results. Use at room temperature and low humidity. Do not heat plate or varnish before pouring. After covering plate, let it sit 15 to 20 seconds, pour off, drain, and wick edges. Then heat plate to dry varnish. Once mixed, shellac has a shelf life of 6 to 12 months. So try to use it within that duration from the date on the bottle, and then contact Gerald at fiegelphoto.com. Yeah, Gerald fiegelphoto.com for more. Happy varnishing, Gerald. So, yeah, I can't remember what I paid for this. I think it was, I want to say around $40 or so. I can't really remember. But we'll give it a whirl. You can see how it does. So those are kind of those are the three main varnishes that are being contemplated for use today, or being used today. So I just want to show you how I varnish my plates, and we're going to do one with gum sandarac, one with the modern acrylic varnish, and one with Gerald's shellac varnish. We'll do the gum sandarac first. I'll show you my methodology, and you can kind of decide from there if you get anything out of this or if it's beneficial to you. So I want to talk to you real quick about some of these problems that people have, and kind of explain. I want to talk to you about the problems, some of the problems people have, or the more common problems people have with varnish, and give you some potential solutions for the problem. So this is the subhead here is gum sandarac varnish, and So the number one problem, generally the number one problem that I hear is that it has, how do we say this? There's, let's just say, specks and spots on the plate. In other words, there's little pieces of material, or the varnish isn't filtered well, there's something in the air, whatever lands on the plate. It's just kind of a material falling on the plate while the varnish is still wet, or the varnish hasn't been filtered well enough. So that's the first problem. The second problem is drying dead. I'm going to talk to you about this in kind of detail. Drying dead, or drying as let's say a matte finish, not a glossy finish. The idea here is to have a glossy finish, right? A glossy, smooth finish. That's what we want. And number 3 is image on the plate dissolves. This is a big one, and I'll talk to you about what happens there. So let's talk about this first one: specks and spots, or material on the plate, little pieces of blah blah, junk on the plate. That happens primarily from a poor filtering job, to be honest with you. So you've got something in the varnish, and then secondly, the plate. This is what you paid the big money to get in here to watch. This is the big one. The plate has not been cleaned on the edges, and or you've overdeveloped and you have like silver scum, or you have unexposed silver a little bit that's developed a little bit. And what happens is that material, the varnish hits it, that material loosens up, and those little specks go everywhere. Or you have them on the corners of the plate isn't really nice and clean. I actually even knock these edges down before I use aluminum, and just knock them down so there's not really any debris or any problems with that kind of stuff. So the idea here is to have a nice, clean, nice clean plate before you varnish. Have your varnish filtered really nicely, very well actually, and then go through the process of varnishing. And the only third possibility on the specks and spots is material in the air. So varnishing isn't something you want to do in every situation, and there is kind of an environmental question to be asked and to be answered. In other words, you probably wouldn't want to varnish in a windy, dusty, animal environment, even cats and dogs, hares, little stuff flying all around. If you don't have an option to get in a really clean space, and it doesn't necessarily need to be, the relative humidity doesn't play a huge role. In fact, sometimes if you play it right, the humidity can actually be an advantage to you. And I'll explain that when we get to drying dead. But humidity actually will, water in the air will actually bring that, capture that dust, those airborne pieces of stuff in the floating around, and help you by way of not having it end up on your plate. If you live in a very dry area like I do, and you have a very dusty or dirty area or animal infested area, whatever, however you want to say it. I love animals, not animal infested, but just have animals around, and you've got the fan on, or you've got a window open, the air's blowing, that kind of thing. What you might want to do is take a bottle of water and spritz the area really good, and close it up, and don't have any wind blowing and all that stuff, and spritz the area down with the water, and that'll capture some of that right before you varnish. You don't want to spritz over your plate or do all those kinds of things into your chemistry, but just think about that and try it, experiment. That's how we learn in this process, is we try things and we learn from them. And document everything really well, either on the plate or in a notebook or something, so you know what's going on. Drying dead, or drying it as a matte finish. Again, this is gum sandarac. So gum sandarac contains ethanol lavender oil, and tree sap, right? So ethanol is the only thing with water in it. This has 5% water. It's 95% alcohol and 5% water. You've got to deal with that 5% of water. You've got to mitigate the water issue. Water and gum sandarac do not get along well at all together. They, you can see it on the outside of the test tube, like I just said there. That's all water and gum mix on the outside. Now the varnish is fine, but so drying dead means that as you heat your plate up and you heat your varnish up, what you're trying to do is you're trying to help that process of evaporating the water out of the alcohol, and the heat and really hot heat afterwards, and you'll see what I do here, helps that finish to be glossy and look really good. And that's what I'm after. When I varnish a plate, I want a super glossy plate. If it dries dead, or you have corners of it where it's dried and striations and kind of a matte finish on it, that's water. You didn't get enough heat in that area, or you didn't mitigate or deal with the water issue. So that's why we heat up. That's what we're trying to get rid of, the water and the alcohol. When we do varnish the plate, we're trying to mitigate that water issue and that drying dead or drying as a matte finish. So that's drying dead or drying as a matte finish. Image dissolves. This is another kind of big one. This happens when you use old collodion. The more the iodides break down, it turns red, turns kind of into iodine. Basically, is what's happening. The collodion doesn't turn into iodine, but those iodides released, and that's why they change color. That old red collodion is kind of weak, if you will. It's tender. Let's say tender. And when you make a fresh batch of gum sandarac alcohol, and it happens in Europe a lot because I don't know, for whatever reason, they get 96% or even a little bit higher percent alcohol. Pure alcohol, less water, but more powerful alcohol. And if that gum sandarac varnish and that collodion hasn't played together in the past, definitely start out with a bum plate before you go to anything you want to varnish that you're not concerned with dissolving the image away. What happens is that strong alcohol hits that old varnish, and it goes right through, hits the collodion and dissolves that the solvent dissolves that collodion away, and it's a mess. I don't know how many emails I've got about oh my God, what just happened, this is awful. The resolution to that, ironically enough, is to add a few drops of water. That usually mitigates it, and do it slowly. Do it a few drops at a time. So if I had this varnish and it was dissolving plates, I'd probably add 5 or 10 drops of distilled water to this and put it in the test tube and try another bummer plate. Sorry, didn't see that there. Try another bummer plate until you get satisfactory results. And that's the idea here, is you want to baby step this. Just like everything in this process, it takes time, it takes documentation, and it takes some effort. So varnishing is no exception to that rule. So that's gum sandarac. Known issues, known problems, some of the more common ones. Let's move on to the shellac. And shellac is nice. I made a shellac. I've made shellac varnish in the past years ago, and seemed to work fine. But I just didn't like the shelf life. And if I have to criticize anything about shellac, the shellac varnish is shelf life. That's the big one, shelf life. Terrible S. Let's fix that. Shelf life. That's my number one concern with something like this. I mean, this looks like a great product, but but I can see the carbon kind of falling out on the bottom there. I don't know if you can see that on the video or not, but it is. And you know, there's some other issues with it, but there's this, the shelf life is the biggest one for me. And other than that, you know, like I said, I make my varnish in kind of mass quantities, and it's not uncommon for me to have a liter or two of varnish sitting for 6, 8, 10, 12 months. Not uncommon at all. Just depending on how many plates, and I'm pretty picky about what I do keep and what I keep around. So varnish is something that I don't want to make over and over again, and you know, have another element to worry about shelf life with. I just don't like it. I like the product, I just don't like the shelf life. And again, yeah, that's kind of interesting that it was used more often in the 19th century than the gum sandarac, or there was combinations of them. These guys tried everything and did everything, and a lot of times they, like the paper said, I think it's been a while since I read it, but talking about they really didn't follow the manuals that much. So it's kind of interesting. And then the third is the we'll just call them the modern acrylics, huh? The modern acrylics. Where do I start? Obviously, I start with unknown. Is it archival? Will it last? A lot of people, you know, aren't really concerned about that because they're doing this as a hobby or they're doing it for fun, and it's just not that serious. And I get that, and that's fine. And I've recommended, I started using this in Europe years ago, and I recommend it to people to use it, to try it and check it out. And I know I have a few plates that I used modern acrylic on years and years ago. And they look fine. I mean, I haven't had them out in the sun for 10 years or anything, but they look okay. And then secondly, it's kind of a subset of this. We don't know the content. We don't know what's in that varnish. So if we could get the recipe, if you will, quote unquote, we'd have a better idea if it's truly innocuous or inert to collodion and silver and those kinds of things. We just don't know that right now. So modern acrylics, that's kind of the downside on that. So to be honest with you, you just saw that the shellac had the least of the problems so far. But if you start using shellac, we might start seeing other issues like gum sandarac. You know, I never had images dissolve on me in the first, I don't know, years. I don't know how long it was before I saw an image dissolve. It was a while. Drying dead came kind of early for me. I didn't really know what it was, but drying dead came early, and then for some reason I just couldn't get through my thick skull here how much you have to filter this stuff. And filtering's incredibly important. Cleanliness is incredibly important. So, having said that, this is what we're going to do in this video. Number one. No, I'm going to use not number one. Number three. Number three. Move this out of the way. Number three here, the 9-second, the brighter one. We're going to use gum sandarac on that one, okay? Number two, this is the 8-second. We're going to use the modern acrylic varnish on it. In fact, you know what? I'm just going to write this on the back of them so we have it. And then number one, we're going to use Mr. Fiegel's bastard shellac. But we're going to start with the gum sandarac varnish. And that's going to be this guy here. So on the back of it, I'm going to write gum sandarac. And on the back of that other one, I'll put That's that one. On the back of the other one, I will write modern varnish. We'll know what that is, which is the acrylic varnish. So, okay. Before my camera gives out on me again, let's start with the gum sandarac. See what we can do there. I like to use the alcohol lamp, or I also have this guy here. This is a catalytic heater, propane. Works really good, especially for large plates, no flame. But for these little plates, I'm just going to use the small alcohol lamp. Okay, so what I like to do is I like to heat up the plate. Although it's dry, I'm still going to heat it up. And the aluminum heats really fast. It won't take much. And I'm also going to get my test tube of varnish ready here. Which is just have to fiddle with this just a little bit. But that varnish, I like to keep it in the test tube, filtered and ready for use. I'm going to get that quite warm. Keep the plate nice and hot. You notice I'm getting it fairly close to the flame is looking up on the edges. I'll change my hand, switch hands here so I can get the other end really good. Nice and toasty. I want to kind of get it a little bit over hot because I'm going to go back over it, or after I'm going to do this with the varnish, I should say. Set the flame way away. I'm going to position it just like collodion. I'm going to have this the drain edge or drain corner. Can talk there for a second. Nice and hot. The plate's still really hot, but it'll dissipate quickly. Nice and level. And just like collodion, pour the varnish on. A nice puddle there. And I'm just going to go to each corner and kind of let it roll around. Unlike collodion, you can let this roll back on itself over and over and over again. And then when I feel satisfied and I feel like it's soaked in well and looks good, I'm going to go ahead and tilt it like that. I'm not going to rock it. And since I want the drip edge down there, get my flame back ready. Now I'm going to keep it tilted as I bring it up over the flame. Very high. Don't get it too close. The varnish is going to continue to, the gravity is going to pull that varnish down and continue to get it really hot. Get it really hot as quickly as you can. You're going to minimize your drip line, and you're going to have a really super glossy, nice finish varnish on the plate. And for you folks that like to overexpose these images, gum sandarac is a great choice because it really brings back that healthy contrast, if you will. And you'll see here, see, I can level that out just a little bit now, get a little bit closer. I don't have to worry about the alcohol catching on fire now. And when I start smelling that lavender oil, I know that I'm ready to... I'll let you guys see these, but this is a pretty good example. If I don't drop it here, pretty good example, still really hot. Pretty good example of gum sandarac varnish. I hope that's in focus. I hope you can see that. Wonder how close I can get it. Still have it in focus. See that? No drip line really. So this is the 9-second gum sandarac. Okay, so we put it on the rack. Set this out here so you can kind of see it. Just let it rest. Next, This is the modern varnish. Now you don't need to heat anything up for modern varnish or the shellac, either one, but plate is really cold, and I want to make sure it's completely dry. So a little bit of heat's not going to hurt anything. I won't put the varnish on while it's hot, but the metal dissipates the heat quickly. So it's nice and dry. I'm going to use this one. This is the gloss varnish. Here's the image pre-varnish. And now, just want to make sure this is cooled. Yeah. Now, what's strange about this is it's going to look very, very strange, weird going on. And it's got a self-leveling compound in it, but it's still, you have to work with it a little bit. So a nice big blue puddle there. I'm just going to work this around. I hope you can see this well enough. I think you can. There we go. And just like varnish or collodion or whatever you're doing here, it's a little thicker, of course, but don't get worried. It looks like that. It looks terrible, blah, 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 but it's fine. And I just drain it back in because my plate is clean, so I don't need to worry about debris or anything going in there. Now, the problem is it's going to be thinner up here than down here. So what I'm going to do, once it comes to a really slow drip, I'm going to level it back out. Then I'll do a little piece after this is dried and cleared and show you each one of the plates, hopefully, or a photograph or something. You'll be able to see the final product. So that's kind of a nice slow drip. I'm going to put it down there. We'll screw this back on the bottle here so I don't tip it over and ruin it, if I can, or ruin everything around here. Maybe I can't. I'll just set it to the side for a second. So that's pulling some of that excess varnish off there. I'm just going to tilt it back this way now for just a second. And I can start seeing it roll back. And just let it come back a little bit and fill that other side in. And that should do it. So although it's really blue looking and bizarre looking actually right now, wait until you see it when it's finished. I'm going to set it right there nice and level. I have a little level, small level spot right here that I can put the plate on. Perfect. Okay, so don't rack that, because if you rack it, that one side's going to be really thin. You'll have a big area down below that's not. USB shellac. This is Fiegel's stuff here. So let's take a look-see. I'm a little bit concerned with the charcoal in the bottom of that bottle, and again, I'm not going to heat the plate up. I'm just going to make sure everything's dry on it. Any of these varnishes they all are very sensitive to water, so that's good. I'm going to leave that burning just for a second here. Let that cool off. And I don't really have a drain bottle for this, but I think we can figure it out here. Little Grolsch beer lock top there for all you Dutch folks out there watching this. It's like a Grolsch bottle, right? So you're going to want to hold all this stuff so it doesn't hit your plate. I'm going to try to keep that quiet so it doesn't stir that charcoal up. It's about 67, 68 degrees down here right now at Fahrenheit, 20 degrees Celsius, 19, 20 degrees Celsius, something like that. So here we go. USB shellac, blonde shellac. Very viscous, very super runny, almost like water. Work it around the plate. And I'm going to go quickly there, or quickly here. Well, this is made with alcohol again, so it's not like you can just throw it over a flame like that. But I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to heat it up just a little bit, keeping it tilted. Notice that I'm tilting it. You can tilt it this way so you can kind of watch it if you want, or maybe you can see it. I don't know. And then every once in a while, I'll just put it down to try to draw some of that shellac off of there. Shellac comes from lac, the lac bug, the female lac bug. I think I mentioned that earlier. There we go. I'm going to call that good. I'm not going to get that too hot. And it still smells good. It's a lot like gum sandarac. I did this years ago. I made some shellac and did it years ago, and it looks really good. Looks really good. I'll put that in the rack. And now let's talk about what the other options are. People have asked me about Renaissance wax. Fine, I have some here. You can Renaissance wax the plate. You can do that prior to this if you want. Just depends on how much time you want to spend in this on this procedure. For me, I've always the gum sandarac has always been just a really good, simple, straightforward. Practice makes perfect, of course. Simple, straightforward methodology to work, and I haven't had any problems with my plates. I haven't had the any kind of issues with the plates as far as varnish goes at all. And I've used, I can't say exclusively, but I've used gum sandarac for the major portion of the last 10 plus years in this process. So if you want to try shellac, or you want to try one of these modern Liquitex acrylic varnishes, those are fine too, as long as I think I said earlier, talked a little bit about the problem. If you ever sell work, or you have work that's being collected, I guess is the best way to put it. I don't know that I'd use the acrylic or the modern stuff, unless you I don't know. It's your choice. But I just wanted to show you those three types of varnishes. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below, and I'd be happy to address them, either written or a quick video, whatever seems most appropriate, and I'll be happy to answer those. As far as making gum sandarac or making shellac, you purchase this. Renaissance wax you purchase. We can do that in another video if you want to do that. It's in my book. If it's in chapter 5, making varnishes, they're all stepped out. And if you don't have my book, I encourage you to get my book. That's kind of why these videos will make more sense to you if you have some kind of reference point, because I'm not starting out like I didn't make the varnish here. It takes a long time, and it's pretty self-explanatory. But if you have any questions, if you have any comments, let me know. And I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week. We'll find something fun to do and something you can benefit from in the wet collodion process. Thank you.